What's up guys, ZiSotto here, and today we're looking at the patch 5.18 change in choices. We've already had the live viewing beforehand, and now we're gonna review the patch in more detail and take a little bit more time with the specific changes and not so much with all the gimmicks around it. First, a quick look at the skins. First, on the big screen here, we've got Oni Chernobog. I think the skin is rather cool. Cool animations, cool voice pack to go along with it, fitting at least. I think this one is really nice. Then we have Mystic Enchantress Noir, kind of like this Sailor Moon theme essentially for Noir. I feel like it was still missing a little bit. I think the minions were still the default minions, and I'm not sure if that's intended, but a nice skin overall. Then again, Noir has a lot of nice skins already. It's not drastically different from the others, I think. Then we have Revenge Tech Nemesis. Speaking of gods with too many skins, I have no idea why Nemesis got another skin with another tech sword. She already had like 2 or 3 of those, and now she's full tech. Great, I guess. Nice animations on the skin, but well, unless you want to get the tier 5, I guess it doesn't really matter much. On the other hand, Battle 1 Achilles, a really cool looking skin, more of a gritty version of Achilles, not the shiny hero that we have in his default model, with a voice pack that goes along with that. Animations are not changed that greatly, but everything else about this one is really nice in my opinion. We have Skadi Pixel Lancer. In this one, I really like the Calder version, the dog here, wolf here, really cool style with that robot look. It works very well for him. Her model is decent as well. The haircut's a bit weird, but overall a nice skin, I would say, with nice effects, nice pixel effects. Once again, those skins are generally well received, I'd say. And then for some reason we have another Loki skin, Loki Headless. I think it's a Headless Norseman. Just a Loki skin for Halloween where you can take his head off. Yeah. Nice animation when you go to stealth and use a special mode. That's about it. Voice packs real quick. So if you're using your headphones, make sure to possibly turn them down because this could be loud.
I have walked from the demon gate to the battleground of the gods, and no man yet has defeated me.
I won't let them put out the magic that is left in this world. It is so special, it needs to be protected.
Stay in formation, and everything will go smoothly.
Oh, not working.
Bosses, mobs, enemies, they got nothing on us.
I'm full of surprises. I have a few up my sleeve that I think you all will really love.
That one has a really dirty laugh, by the way, not only here, but in the laugh emote, so be prepared to hear that from the Loki mains. All right, some updates to the Hera's Odyssey, obviously. We got Oni Chernobog, Mystic Enchantress Noir, Revenge Tech Nemesis, and the lo-fi hip-hop music theme. Interesting enough, that wasn't mentioned at all. I think that's probably one of the more interesting music themes we had so far, maybe one that people will actually put on in the background. And then we have Battle 1 Achilles, unfortunately, as a bonus item. I wish this one would have been one of the regular rewards because I don't know if I want to get that much from the Odyssey because I'm not sure how far you have to get into it and how many quests or whatever you have to do to reach that, but it's going to be quite a fair bit unless you're buying all the skins anyways. Then we have a Project Olympus, a few updates, and in this context it's first important to say there is one outside of this that's also like briefly mentioned here later, but there is a fix for the lobby chat that will be coming next week, not when the patch comes out, but next Monday I think it is. So if you're on PC and you have this lobby chat calling issue while in a party, they're trying to fix that completely. They were not able to recreate that bug somehow in-house, but they are aware it exists and they're trying to release a fix so you can actually call your guards and actually have a lobby chat. About time. But good, it's being done. And then we have the favorite items. And this one is a nice one. It sounds a bit weird maybe at the start, but for everything that we have in the game, like announcer packs, not voice packs, sorry. Announcer packs, your everything you can randomize. I'm actually not sure what you can all randomize, your background loading frame and whatnot. You can now set favorites. And that means that you can choose which announcer packs you want, for example, and randomize between those. And I think that is great because I think there is more than one announcer pack that I would like to regularly use. For example, I like the Mesmerize one and I like the Capri one. And I would like to randomize between those, but I don't like to randomize between all of them because that throws in a lot of announcer packs that I'd rather not hear. And as such, I think this is a very good solution. And yeah, now you can just choose whichever you want. On console, there's a queue bop redesign, so you cannot accidentally cancel out of queue anymore. or accidentally accept basically as well, I think. Here it says it's about declining. I don't know how that works, but it sounds like a good fix. And the god selection UI has been updated. It looks a bit different now, looks a bit nicer. Then there are different additions to chests and Fantasy Point Store. In the awesome chest, we get the Primal Storm Susano now. And in the Fantasy Point Store, you get Child's Play Scylla, Scallywag Kali, and Volcanic Agni. We also have a lot of bug fixes here regarding the reconnect bug before logging in. That was there for ages and ages, never bothered me, but interesting that they're going to fix that one. So it's not showing up before you log in anymore. And apparently it was already in a hotfix or will be in the next hotfix. Then fixed an issue where players in party will not be able to use the lobby chat or roll calling. That's the one we're talking about, but apparently it's also going to be sped up with the lobby in itself. Then adjusted PTS matchmaking parameters to increase players' chances of getting into a match on PTS only, which is necessary because the queue times are so long, but at the same time, or rather they were so long, but at the same time we don't have those queue times anymore. So if you don't find a match when the queue pops, you're in priority queue, you might still not find a match, and that's why they are different. But at the same time, we're already playing with like all kinds of levels of play on PTS, so this might be messy. Some fixes to the key binding so they don't reset anymore, thank you for that. And then players should now receive more combination points for longer matches, which wasn't working prior, and it didn't really matter how long the match was, apparently. And that will reset every 2 patches every month, for those of you that are aware. And that brings us to the items. Heartseeker can now be bought in Assault. This is a bug fix, and that brings us already to the guard bug fixes. Anubis gets some volume and lowered and raised on the Cosmic Power skin. Apollo gets a fix on its animations for Winner's Circle. Aphrodite gets a fix for a crash that happened with the Venus skin. And Baron Samedi gets a fix where he could do like too much with being revived by a Capri ult while using his own ult. I think it was just extended or something. Cerberus Paralyzing Spit had the wrong mana cost, and that's been adjusted. Ganesh players should... This is actually funny because I saw a pretty funny clip of this. Players should no longer get stuck on the top of Ganesh pillars. So you could literally put a pillar of Ganesh ult under a Ram, and when the Ram drops from the sky, he would just stand on this pillar and couldn't move down until it was gone. So yeah, that's something. Kumbhakana lowered the volume on Throwback for General Noceris, and Vulcan fixed an issue for the intro audio continuing to play while muted. And that brings us to the big deal here, being Berserker's Shield, first of all. Berserker's Shield gets a small nerf. And this nerf is primarily targeted at hunters, because hunters were picking this item up because it was good enough to pick it up on hunters. Decrease attack speed from 15% to 10%. Basically, the goal here will be that Berserker's Shield doesn't become a secondary Ekival / RC when that was still being built in that slot. And, hunters build hunter items, while warriors still benefit enough from the item to use it otherwise. And in that context, there will also be a specific change to Erlang, which we're getting to. Messenger's Mask decreased magical power from 30 to 20. This is kind of understandable because Messenger's Mask, just as a tier 2, had a lot of stats and still has a lot of stats overall, in my opinion. So it's very rewarding to just go into the tier 2 and they want to fix that or just build it very early. And Bummer's Mask gets a nerf. And this one is one that I'd like to briefly discuss here. Cooldown reduction decreased from 20% to 10%. I think a big part of what made Bummer's Mask was the mix of movement speed and cooldown reduction. And it was only a few specific guards that really made use of it very well. The ones that we saw in the SPL were Thoth, who just has the capability to do a lot of poke from long range still, and it's even harder to catch with an already great escape and that extra movement speed. And the Morrigan, who doesn't she doesn't care much about the damage reduction and increase because she can simply change over to any other guard and not have those downsides anymore. And obviously benefits a lot from cooldown reduction as well. So those were the guards we've primarily seen it on. There are a few more that could make use of it. I think, for example, Janos would be a guard that could make good use of it. And I'm not sure if there, at this point, where any of the guards was played on. I expect some at least. I think it was actually played on more guards in middle lane. Never mind that. I forgot who it was, but yeah. The point for me is, a big part of the reason why it was valued was also there was 20% CDR. And with it going down to 10, I feel like most mages won't make that much use of it anymore. I think Morrigan still might, because again, she doesn't have to care that much about the downsides, and for her the big deal is the movement speed, rotating out of the map and just stealing camps so quickly. It's absolutely frustrating to play against Morrigan at the moment with Bombas, but that part's not going to change. It's just going to be the cooldown reduction. So I'm not sure if I like this. I like Bombas Mask as an item. I like the concept. I'm not sure if taking the viability away from multiple gods due to taking one of the core stats down by half is really what should be done here. There are still other items that give you same CDR for similar prices at least. And yeah, I don't know. I'm not really a fan. I'd rather see Bombas get a little bit too much into the meta for a while and then tone it back and be like, okay, yep, it's been played by everyone everywhere, than having it kind of being so niche that only one god really uses it. Because that's basically what happened with the other masks. I don't ever see anyone build Lonos or Rangers, because why would you? They're just not worth the sacrifice, the trade-off at this point for the gods that can make use of them, in my opinion. For the most part. I'm sure there are niche cases once again. Bombas is the only one that's left, and now Bombas is gonna get like gradually taken out as well, and I don't like that approach. I'd rather see them a little bit more. But hey. And the next one is Heartseeker. This one is cool. If an instant AoE ability hits multiple targets, this effect will now trigger on the lowest health target in the area. Now, this one was something Flareboot and I think Soggy Sandal were talking about on Twitter, I think with a Hyris employee. I don't know if it was with Ajax or whatever, but they were talking about how it works currently, and it basically turned out that it was chosen at random. The target was chosen at random, whoever has the lowest ping or whatever. And the idea was to make it the target closest to the ability. Like, for example, Medusa ult, the target's closest to Medusa will take the Heartseeker damage. And I said that's probably bad, and I'd rather have it random over that, because that would mean that you probably hit the tank most of the time who's in your face, and that's the least benefit you can get out of Heartseeker. The response, I think, from Soggy Sandal was that he said that, but randomizing is no better. I'd rather have it predictable and they come in from the side or whatever to make sure you can get some damage off that way. But what Hyris chose here is actually, in my opinion, the best solution, even though it buffs Heartseeker, because now it hits the targets with the lowest health. I'm not sure if it's lowest health in percentage or an absolute value. I think it will be absolute value. And as such, you can really take down squishies with this easier with big AoE abilities. Again, like Medusa ult. Another question in this context that came up was, what will happen if you hit somebody and they die from the ability already, and they would be the lowest health target? As far as I understand it, and I'm not sure if this is coded this way, the damage from the ability is now applied first, because on the patch notes, so they said it's basically one tick later. So the damage is applied, and either the health is checked at that point, in which case Heartseeker would go to waste if it hits the lowest health target and they already died to the ult or the ability. Or what happens is the health value is taken, the damage from the ability is subtracted. So say, for example, you have 50 health and the Medusa ult hits you for like 700 base, and it's like, okay, good, you're on minus 650. And then, after that is done, Heartseeker would see, okay, this target is already dead, so we take the next lowest health target. That would be the more logical solution, in my opinion. That would be the better solution, so it doesn't go to waste. That would make the item even stronger, though. So I'm not sure which one is the option here, but at the end of the day, it's definitely a buff for Heartseeker for those guards that can use it with AoE abilities, like Medusa, Hui, all that stuff. Mage's Blessing. Decreased bonus ability damage from 25 to 10. Wait, this I think was not mentioned in the patch notes. Interesting. Added 20 magical power, added 10 physical power. So this is interesting because it's a different mechanic from what I thought then. Essentially, it will still get more damage because depending on your scaling, obviously, but in most situations, I would say it will still get a little bit more damage, all around the same. But it is now added to everything. It's just raw power, which means it scales better with basics, I think. And it also scales better with any other item that amplifies your power of some sort or any passive. It's like technically Rod of Tahuti. At least older Rod of Tahuti would have been like something where it would be very, very relevant when it was actually still built. So these shifted stats might be a little bit more helpful. I was actually confused that it got so much power, but now with the decreased bonus ability damage, it claims itself a little bit more. Yeah, so it's so that Mage's Blessing is a little bit more viable for gods that make use of that power and of that CDR and don't go into a Book of Thoth right away all the time. And that brings us to God Balance. Baron Samedi gets another nerf against my prediction, but it's a very tiny nerf. Wrap it up, increase cooldown from 12 seconds to 14 seconds. He's still very good. I think he's still going to be very good after Wrap It Up being nerfed a little bit, especially because you see him investing into CDR anyways. At this point, I wouldn't even be surprised if he gets nerfed again. And by me saying that, he'd probably not get nerfed again. But no, I think he might actually see further nerfs after this because he's still going to be very good. At the same time, the meta is shifting with Berserker's Shield. In solo, he will have a harder time now anyways, so that might have an impact too. Chernobog gets nerfed, and I think it's once again not what should be nerfed. Disability, a Living Nightmare, this ability no longer triggers his passive on every basic attack. His passive will now continue to function normally during the effects of this ability. So no more bonus damage through the passive, a little bit less word salad in that ultimate description, which is good. But what I really think is that the big issue of Chernobog's ult will, at least on higher levels of play, always be the AoE slow. You can't avoid these shadows at all in all situations, or many situations you simply can't, because they're really fast and they apply slows to you and then they apply more slows to you. And I've been told by Emilzy that in competitive, the ult is often just used by Chernobog ulting and cancelling it afterwards, or like just letting it run out and just come back down, because that way the whole enemy team gets slowed, and that's a super good engage for a team fight. No matter where they are, they get slowed. They have a demon on them. You know where everyone is. It's basically like a Nuwa ult, but rather than having to build an item like Gem of Isolation for the slow, you get it immediately, and it stacks for a while as well. It stays on them for a while through these minions following them, and it sets up way better for a team fight. Nuwa ult is something that you want to keep to secure at the end of a team fight when somebody gets away most of the time, unless you want to reveal your enemies and slow them and go in. But with Chernobog, you will just choose to go in that way very often. You know, okay, I can get a window here to fight, engage on 2 of them, and then they're slow, and the rest has a slower time coming to them. So it's so good. It's such a, like, Chernobog's kit in itself is good, but this ult is such a massive team fight ult when the actual intention of the slow is for Chernobog to have his stuff set up, but the setup is way more for his entire team than just himself. Like, what I think would be more fair by that logic would be him flying up, going into one of the shadows, briefly being unable to do something, and just slowing that one target, for example, and then popping out of the shadow. That would be something where it's like, yeah, okay. That way, you know, you actually slow that one target that you want to trade. But it's a global slow, and it's pretty crazy, and that's what I think makes Chernobog so strong, along with the stupid steroid. Erlang Shen, however. Erlang Shen gets a change. It's a nerf, without a doubt, to Berserker's Shield, specifically into his lane sustain. But I know some people are already going crazy about this. Listen, Erlang Shen right now is a very, very strong god. And I across every tier list, every ranking I've seen, every high-level player that I've seen talk about him, he's considered better than average to very, very strong, somewhere on that scale, because he has insane pressure in solo lane through strong clear that he always had, good sustain with Berserker's Shield, and the double proc with his dog. And if we want to go all technical, he can also get very strong, super strong clear with the new Golden Blade, though that's typically not a viable build path. But it's also something that he can do. The biggest weakness of Erlang Shen was the loss of Death Toll, which really hindered him. But Berserker's Shield is basically a better Death Toll. And it still is that, even if he doesn't double proc it from his dog. He still has an AoE cleave in his attack swings to proc it more often than most other gods. He can still proc it decently with his normal basic attacks. He's got good swing times to do that. He still has an attack speed steroid, I think, yeah. So he can proc it even more often with that. So he still Maybe not quite Bellona with her 2, and maybe not quite Osiris with his double cleave in his chain, but right after them, when it comes to AoE cleave, self-heal as a warrior in solo lane, and he doesn't need the dog for that. He's still good after this nerf. It takes a little bit of his sustain away, but his sustain was absolutely absurd between the self-heal from the dog, from himself, and from his ultimate. It's fair. It's not gonna trash him. He was really, really good before. So what's happening to the dog is Erlang Shen's dog no longer triggers on-hit item passives or a portion of Erlang Shen's damage. So all that extra stuff that he had before is gone. Instead, each time Erlang Shen's dog hits the target, they will take 2% of their maximum HP as damage. So it's just a mini Kins attached to Erlang Shen now. But that's not a bad thing. 2% of their health, their maximum health with every single hit, that adds up quickly. Obviously, you still would have to have penetration to deal true damage in that regard, but it's still something worth keeping in mind. I think with Kins at max, like max health on the enemy target, it's like 7% per hit in total with this. So yes, Erlang Shen will be a little bit weaker in some departments, but his fighting against certain opponents, especially when going full damage, might actually end up being better if they have a lot of health. And his fighting as a jungler with a more aggressive build will most definitely also be better, and he can still run Berserker Shield there. It's so good on him still that it's still good. So Erlang Shen is not dead, is still in a very good situation. It may, with some builds and some situations, actually be stronger than before. That's something that's yet to be determined. How much damage 2% of the maximum HP of a target are in comparison to the, I think, 15% of your basic attack damage that he had before, because it really comes down to the situation. But like, if a target has 3,000 health, then that's still 60 damage before protection. So I think the dog usually didn't quite do that much. Just saying, with most builds, you know, just throwing it out there. But yeah, that brings us to the next one, Freya. And she actually doesn't get any nerfs or buffs. She just gets visual changes. And normally that's something where you'd be like, whatever. But with Freya, they're actually pretty cool. Now her 1, which is funny because she says light my blade when using it, but it no longer lights up her blade. Instead, she gets a ring around her body, a glowing ring with animations that indicates that she currently has a 1 charged up, whereas a 2 Aurora Blade will now light up her sword, but the lighting up sword has completely new animations, even for the different skins. And at least the one that we've seen, the Frost Maiden, actually looks really, really cool. I want to take a look at the other ones once PTS is up, but this one is actually very interesting. So I like this change, visual clarity, and looks cool on top of that. Perfect. Ganesh, Dynamic Pillars now deals an extra 60% increased damage on the first time a target passes over the threshold. Decreased damage per tick from 95 to 255 to 90 to 250. For some reason, Hyris said that was just an adjustment. I think this is not just an adjustment, right? So the problem for Ganesh with his ultimate, we talked about this, Amir and I talked about this recently in the tier list, and it was one of the main reasons why Ganesh was just placed very low, is that people just walk over his Dynamic Pillars walls. They're just like, you know, I'll just take that damage and that slow and walk off. It's okay. It hurts, but it doesn't hurt that much. And with this being increased, with extra 60% damage here, which is a lot, you can't just walk over the threshold all the time. You really got to consider your options. If you have a leap, you can obviously jump over, or if you have full health, then you can maybe get out. But if you're already low-ish, then you don't want to walk across this anymore. And I think we'll see a lot of people like making the mistake of walking over them and realizing, wow, they actually do a lot of damage now. And the tick damage reduction in return here per tick is super low. It's 5 per tick, but normally in most situations you don't hit all the ticks anyways unless you get the 3 lockdown and then maybe someone else body blocking the enemy. Most of the time you just get 3 ticks maybe at best. So this is, in my opinion, most definitely a buff, even though the values are shifted in a way. Nemesis gets a buff as well. Retribution, increased shield healing from 60 to 100% of the damage received to 80 to 100%. So more healing early on. And I think that's a very enjoyable feature, enjoyable mechanic, because I think Retribution should be a moment where you either CC Nemesis or you choose not to attack her. If you do neither, then yeah, I guess you're not counterplaying. Obviously, this can be frustrating if you fight her, but I mean, you can still get through her shield anyways. But as it stands now, it's something that has more of an impact early on, whereas beforehand, you would have to level it up, which you, to be fair, usually still want to do second, depending on your build playstyle. But, you know, now it's not so much about having it leveled to even have that healing effect first, but you get most of it from the start. And I think that feels a lot better with Nemesis not being a great god at the moment overall, and otherwise often being very busted, so we'll find some middle ground here maybe. And this is the biggest change of the patch, and I actually didn't realize it at first because the description was rather weird. I'm going to read out the first part here. Pele is heating up on the battleground, but she suffers from a few clarity issues. Her current ultimate replaces her basic attacks with abilities that can cause confusion and make items or crowd control have unintuitive effects. We are fixing this by changing her ultimate self-buff to be a basic attack with additional bonus cone damage added on successful hits. This will cause the ability to work more like expected, but also add a considerable amount of damage to the hits. Power class cooldown increased from 13 to 14 seconds. 1 second. Big whoop. Eruption decreased inner damage from 85 to 265 to 80 to 260. So close range, a little less damage. Decreased outer damage from 80 to 240 to 60 to 220. That's more impactful. 20 in the outer circles where you often hit them means, especially in a team fight, there's also a chunk of damage that's lost, especially early on. But now for the really big deal. Volcanic Lightning. The ability damage from cone attacks now procs off of basic attacks. This means that if Pele is disarmed, she cannot get the cone attacks off. If an enemy has block stacks, the basic attacks get blocked, but the cones do not. Hyris Pekis, I think it was, posted about this on Twitter just to clarify this. And I don't have 100% verification on this yet, but it very much sounds like it from all I've heard about it now. From what I understand, this ability will now cause you to deal your normal basic attack damage and the cone damage with its own base damage and scaling to the first target you hit. The targets behind that still only get hit by the cone damage. Why am I emphasizing this so much? Because it effectively means that she gets basic attack damage, which is 100% scaling of your power, plus base damage of the ability. I don't quite know it from the top of my head. I think it's starting somewhere between 100 something, 100, was it just 100? And then up to 240 roughly. And on top of that, gets 40% scaling. So you have 3 basic attacks, which each deal 140% scaling damage, plus a base damage value of somewhere between 100, 200 something, depending on the rank of the ability. That is on top of the ultimate itself also dealing damage. I think it's roughly up to 500 on the highest level. That means that with Pele, you just want to straight up ult into people. You just ult them, use your basics, use maybe Pyroclast in between the basics or to attack cancel, or use Eruption to lock them down, just for those 3 basic attacks. And after that, a lot of targets should be pretty much almost dead, if not dead. And then Pele has this burst already in her kit. And Volcanic Lightning is going to push this burst a lot. It was awkward before because sometimes your basic attack damage with the cones was actually lower than just using basics, which made the ult really annoying. But now it's the opposite. Now it's just super strong basics. Like, not low-key level basics, but all 3 of them combined definitely do more scale, have more scaling and more base damage by far than the low-key amplification on S3. So yeah, plus the ability damage. So you want to level this now, and you just want to spam this and get cooldown reduction and power and do this whenever you can. You can get Hydra's Lament as well if you even want like some more basic attack damage after that, you know, for the cancels as well, and then you get even more amplified damage. And this is gonna be super painful, and I expect this to get nerfed very quickly, maybe even before PTS, or maybe even before it hits live. Maybe they notice it. I will show this off in game on PTS if I get on there soon, and you know, just show you a clip of how crazy this might actually be. I'm taking credit right here. If anyone else uploads the video, you know where it's coming from. All right, and that brings us to Sobek. Tail whip, increased cooldown from 12 seconds to 14 seconds. Not the biggest surprise. Sobek, very much a competitive god, who is performing very well in solo lane, and this gives him a little bit less disruption and a little bit poke and walk away potential. So, yep, cool, understandable. Thor, Tectonic Rift, increased stun duration from 0.8 seconds to 1.6 seconds to 1 second to 1.6 seconds. This helps because now you can hit the double tap with the hammer a lot more reliably. You can just hit the stun, level 1 stun, not level 2 stun, use your 1, boop, boop, comes back if you use it right away, and you dealt the damage. Whereas beforehand, there was always this risk of the enemy just getting away if it was just the lowest rank of the ability. So that's nice, that's good to know, and that helps Thor a little bit at least. And he's been struggling, so I understand that, and I think it's fair. And with that, we're done with these patch notes. Thank you guys very much for watching. I hope this was interesting and insightful. If you're new to the channel, feel free to click the sub button and the bell. It really helps me out. And other than that, I will see you for the next one tomorrow. DukeSloth, out.